Well, hello, everyone. I am here again with Coach Leanne this time. I am so excited to continue our conversation. And you know the drill. Before we actually get into the meat of our topic, which is the blame game, what's the difference between playing the blame game and taking some personal responsibility for things? And how do you make that switch? Or what do you do if you're interacting with someone who loves to play the blame game? Then what do you do? So thank you so much for giving a shout out. Hello, hello, hello. We're glad you're here. Leanne and I and all of our coaches have been doing Facebook Lives for a long time. This is my public Facebook page. So we just want to give you a shout out that it's really important that what you put on the actual Facebook feed is something that you're very comfortable with other people seeing. But we do have a place for you to ask questions if you don't feel comfortable putting it on the Facebook feed. And Amanda, if you could put that in the chat, that would be really great. It is, I'll give it to you verbally in case you're listening to this, but it's lesliebernick.com/question/. lesliebernick.com/question/. So you can go there and type in your question and we'll answer that question later on. But if you have a question that you don't want it public on the Facebook page, we have a little safeguard for you because maybe your mother-in-law follows me too, or maybe somebody else is going to check this page later and you're going to see your name and you don't want me to, I can't take it down. So you don't want to say something that later on you're going to feel like, oh, why did I say that in that moment? So just be careful about what you say on a public Facebook page. But today we're talking about the blame game, And so Aaliyah and I were just talking about it. What would you think the blame game looks like? What does the blame game look like? Let's just talk about what the blame game looks like. Hello, everyone. So good to see you. Can you put in the chat, give us some definitions of if you've played the blame game, it's all your fault that do you play the blame game with your children? If only you wouldn't listen to me, I wouldn't be a maniac mom. How many of us have been guilty of playing that game? We've been playing it our whole life. It's the easiest game to play in the world. So what does the blame game look like? And can you take some responsibility? I've played that game 1 or 2 times in my life. And what does that look like? Having an affair and says it's my fault if I would have. So he's blaming you. Yeah, people do the blame game to you that if I mess up, if I have an affair, if I cheat, if I lie, of course it's all your fault that I did that. Yeah. Justifying our behavior for various reasons, Julie says. Yeah, totally. Brenda says, totally. I have. Totally. Okay, so we can understand that the blame game is probably the oldest, most familiar game in history. Who played it? The very first human beings, right? So when Adam got confronted by God, Adam said, well, it was the woman that you gave me, God. She's the one who made me do it. And the woman's like, whoa, wait a minute. It's that serpent. He made me, that serpent you created, right? And so the blame game is as old as history, as old as history. And so we want to teach you a different way. Thoughts, Leanne? What are your thoughts about the blame game? Give us an illustration of how you have played it.
Oh, I have played it so many times. I think as a wife, I have played it. I have been guilty of saying, if you wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done. Okay. I'm not going to give like real specifics, but ABC, PDQ. Okay. That would be very much in my wifeyhood. With my kids, oh my goodness. When they were little, I remember being at the grocery store and getting very embarrassed about the way my kids were behaving in the grocery cart. And I remember turning to a lady at the grocery store and saying, oh, you know what? They just didn't get a nap today and they're really hungry. Blaming it all, their behavior on all of these things rather than, wow, as a mom, I didn't prepare very well for the grocery store and I could have brought snacks and made sure that they had a nap, but I didn't do that. And then even in the workplace, well, if they would have done that, then I would have had this on time and I would have done this, all of that. I think it can show up in many areas of my life. And I often say, if I'm pointing my finger, one finger is to you, there are 3 pointing right back at me. There are three pointing right back at me. And so personal responsibility is a real passion of mine, as you know. And it's an area of growth in my life that I feel like the Lord keeps wanting me to keep climbing that mountain of letting go of the rid of the blame game and embracing that. So thanks for the opportunity to share.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'd like to unpack a little bit about the blame game because I think it makes so much sense that if only you would have listened to me, I wouldn't have exploded. If only you
Yep.
would have obeyed me, I wouldn't have. If only you wouldn't, if only you would do everything I want in the bedroom, maybe I wouldn't have watched porn. So it makes so much sense that somehow you can control the bad outcome if only you do it right or if only you fix everything. So the problem with the blame game is people tend to play it in one of two ways, sometimes both ways, but mostly you have a proclivity to one or thing. Somebody always blames somebody else for the problem, or you always blame yourself. Like, if only I would have had more sex with him, he wouldn't have done that. If only I would have been a better mom, my kids wouldn't have made bad choices. If only I would have, left earlier, I wouldn't have gotten in that car accident. And so we blame ourselves for everything, or we're living with someone who loves to blame us for everything. And so you tend to do one of two, you tend to have that habit of either blaming yourself for everything or blaming other people for everything. And let me just bring this chart out again. We've done this a million times. We've got an external world of things that happen to us, like Leanne's story about being in the grocery store with her kids. And we have an internal world about what's going on with us. And so what we tend to think is when this isn't working out well, then it's somehow controllable. Like either we did something wrong here, and so we have to fix us, or someone else did something wrong here, and it's their fault that this is going wrong, right? And so it makes a little sense. Like if the traffic was going faster, then I wouldn't be so upset, right? If my kids listened to me or my husband didn't cheat on me, then I wouldn't be in this situation of being tempted to cheat on him to pay him back, right? So there's a little smidgen of truth that this hard reality out here, which we talked about yesterday, this hard reality, whether it's big deal hard, like my husband or I just got diagnosed with cancer, or little bitty hard, like my kids are acting up in the grocery store cart and I'm a little embarrassed and I got to make excuses for everybody, right? That's hard, all right? We tend to not want to look at how we can share some responsibility in all of that. And so we're going to talk about that today because one of the things we talked about Monday, and if you didn't watch our Facebook Live on Monday, we talked about one of the things that we know is God's will, because the topic on Monday, if you weren't here, is did I marry the wrong person? And it is all my external problems because it's all my fault because I married the wrong person. And now I'm forever in God's plan X of life because I missed plan A and I'm just doomed to suffer the rest of my life because I didn't marry the right person. Or maybe the solution is get rid of this guy and marry somebody else because I didn't marry the right person. If I only married the right person, things would turn out for me. And we talked about God's will being ultimately your growth and maturity. That ultimately God's will isn't external. God's will is internal. That you would grow to become more like Christ. And so whatever happens in your external world, God says that you can be confident that if you let it, it will mature you. Even icky, hard stuff will mature you. Will help you grow to be mature if you let it, right? And so one of the things that we talked about yesterday then in our conversation on Facebook is what is the mark of maturity? And one of the hallmarks of maturity is that self-knowledge, self-awareness. Like I have a part to play in this. I have to own my side of the street. What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to become in this situation? Right? And I'm just going to give a very simple example that any one of you can relate to. And we've talked about this in other situations. So maybe some of you have heard this story before. But if you were in a situation and the external is your husband's yelling at you, he's screaming and yelling at you. And inside, you're aware that your body is got to go to the bathroom. And you've got to go to the bathroom pretty bad. Like if you don't leave in the next 60 seconds, you're going to have an accident. What do you do in that moment? Do you just sit there and pee all over yourself or poop all over yourself and then blame him because he was yelling? Or do you say to yourself, I got to take care of me. I got to take responsibility for me right now because I'm aware that if I don't take responsibility for me, I will humiliate and dishonor myself by peeing and pooping all over myself. And so I've got to leave the situation so that I can go take care of me, right? All of us, if we're mature adults, would understand that and take responsibility for that. Nobody likes having an accident in their pants if they can help it, right? But what about your temper? So you're sitting there and he's yelling at you and berating you and blaming you and accusing you, and you're getting hotter and hotter inside. And then all of a sudden you just ignite with the words of F you or whatever you're going to say to him in response. And then you blame him. Well, you put me in that situation. You wouldn't let me leave. Well, if you had to go to the bathroom, do you think he wouldn't let you leave? Right? So if you said, I have got to go to the bathroom, would he say you're not allowed to go? Maybe some of you live with that kind of person. And if you do, you need to get out. But most men would say, go. And you don't have to say, I have to go to the bathroom to calm down. You say, I have to go to the bathroom. I have to get out of here right now, or I'm going to dishonor myself. That's taking responsibility for you, not for him. He might be acting like a maniac, but you're taking responsibility for your safety, your mental health, your well-being in that moment. Thoughts, Leanne? What are your thoughts about that? Because you're big on taking responsibility.
You just did such a brilliant job of talking about it. We just so appreciate you and how you framed that. And so where the blame is all about you, the responsibility place is all about I. And so it's knowing what role you're playing in the interaction or the situation. And there have been times, Leslie, I love that you brought up the illustration. There have been times where, my colon's overacting and I really do need to get to the bathroom. And then there has been times in my life where my temperature is up so high emotionally that I have to excuse myself. And sometimes the best way to do that is to go into the bathroom.
Yeah, because you might be living with someone who, if you said, I need a timeout, they're going to mock you and make fun of you. And it's going to create another temptation for you to retaliate, right? But if you just say, I need a break, I got to go to the bathroom. Most people understand that and let you do what you need to do to take care of you in the biological sense so that you don't dishonor yourself. But why wouldn't you do that for yourself in the psychological sense, in the emotional sense, in the spiritual sense?
One thing that's really coming up for me as you share that, Leslie, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what our viewers and our participants have to say about that. Something that comes up for me is my ego can get in the way. My pride can get in the way. And my motivation to be seen, known, and heard can cause me to play the blame game and try to over-explain things in such a way. And it really doesn't go well. If somebody is not willing and ready to hear what I have to say, then it's best that I take care of me. It's, don't throw your pearls before swine. We've talked a lot about that. And I think one benefit for me, if I excuse myself and go to the restroom, there's oftentimes a mirror in there. There's a mirror in there, and I can look at myself. I can give myself a little pep talk. And I can also look and see what's happening with my countenance. What's happening spiritually inside of me? Am I looking up to God to help me, or am I extremely focused, and am I tense? Because my body is going to tell me if I'm really aware. And I have that opportunity to raise my own awareness and acknowledge where I'm at in this conversation. So, and it also helps give me an opportunity to take a breath and maybe have some empathy and realize maybe their temperature is up too, whether it's my kids, my husband, my grandkids, a friend. So it allows me some space.
Mm-hmm. So let me read you a verse that we're going through Proverbs right now in our Conquer group. And so I was in charge of chapter 24 And this verse really struck out to me on the 24th. I read, the chapter for the day of the month. And I thought this was really helpful for me as I was thinking about some struggles that I'm having. And it says, if you fail under pressure, so this is Proverbs 24:10. If you fail under pressure, your strength is too small. Well, that's a fine blame game there. God, you're blaming me for failing because my strength is too small. My strength is too small. The point he's trying to make is if you are in a situation where you've messed up, the mature person doesn't blame. The mature person self-reflects. Remember, we talked yesterday that one of the hallmarks of maturity is self-awareness and self-reflection. So obviously, if you fail, your strength is too small for the moment and you're not acknowledging and living within your capacities. Right now, my bladder is not as capable as it used to be when I was 20 years younger. My strength is too small. And if I try to hold it longer than I can, I'm going to fail. All right. And so knowing my capacities, I am a fallible human being. I have limited capacities. There's no shame in that.
That's right.
That is reality, ladies. That is truth. And we are going to live in hard truth. I'm not God. I'm not Superwoman. I can't be endlessly patient, endlessly enduring, endlessly, don't need any sleep, don't need to eat, no need to calm down, don't need to do it. I can just be, no, it's not true. And so knowing your capacity, both biologically of how much you can handle and psychologically, mentally, spiritually. And if our capacity is too strong, we have two choices. One is own it. And the other is build our capacity if we're capable to do that and we're able, so that we can handle things more. But that's all our responsibility. Right? Let me just read you one more verse from Proverbs about this self-awareness, because it's so, so important to your growth. And those who you talk to who aren't self-aware and they play the blame game, the Bible talks about them too. They don't want self-awareness. They don't want to learn from their mistakes. The Bible calls them in Proverbs fools.
That's right.
Let that not be you. Let that not be you. Let me just read one more verse about self-awareness, because I think this is, and again, remember, Proverbs is written for a man. It's written for a young man by his father. So it talks about women being the bad guys, but it doesn't mean women are the bad guys. It means that he's talking to him about be careful of immature women. Be careful of immature women. So here's what he says about immature women. He says, my son, pay attention. Listen to my wise counsel. Then you will show discernment. In the end, he's talking about the immoral, immature woman. She's as sweet as honey. Her mouth is smoother than oil. Do you live with a charmer? Do you live with a man whose words are sweet as honey, smoother than oil sometimes? But at the end, she is as bitter as poison, as dangerous as a double-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lead straight to the grave. She cares nothing about the path to life. She staggers down a crooked trail and doesn't even realize it. She's not aware. She's not aware of how foolish and stupid she's behaving. Why? Because she's not listening to God. She's not growing. Let that not be you. And it might be your husband, but you can't be responsible for his growth. Only he can be responsible for his growth. But you must be responsible for yours.
So good, Leslie. I love that you brought up Conquer and our Proverbs challenge. I had today. So today I had the privilege of talking about Proverbs 29, and it goes right along with our topic. Would it be okay if I shared that as well? I think that the more we can get our face in the book, the more we can spend time in God's word and see what does he have to say about the blame game and personal responsibility. So here we go. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. And so the verse that was really meaningful for me out of Proverbs 29 here, it speaks to wisdom and foolishness. And it says, there is more hope for a fool than for someone who speaks without thinking. Personal responsibility. Personal responsibility. And then in Proverbs 29, it also says in verse 11, fools vent their anger, but the wise quietly hold it back. And oftentimes in the blame game, sometimes our voices are raised. We're wanting to be heard. We start yelling. We start doing all those things, which can lead us down that path of foolishness. And just like the verse you spoke about, we may not even know we are on that path until later we lay our heads on the pillow at the close of the day and we're talking with our Lord and we're saying, did I show up today as the woman you want me to be? The disciplined woman who puts you first? Or did I point my finger out at everybody else and make them responsible for my well-being and my behavior? And I'm here to say, not let that not be said of me, Lord, and let that not be said of the women within the sound of our voice, that we can take ownership.
Yeah. And I think this is so important because we so want our husbands to understand us. We want them to hear us, and they probably want that from us too. But we have capacity limitations, right? We're tired, we're cranky, we can't understand what they mean, or we don't want to because we're angry right now, and they might be too. And if a couple is willing to talk about that and respect each other's boundaries and respect each other's limitations and work through those things, you can come through the other side and have a stronger marriage and be more mature because of the hard things in your marriage. But when both people don't, the Bible talks about that too. Galatians says, quit biting and devouring each other or you will destroy each other. And so I'm talking to one side of the street. I don't usually have couples listening to this. I don't usually have men. I'm talking to one side of the street. So you can take ownership for your side of the street. That doesn't mean you're going to have a great marriage. You may not. Because someone was saying earlier, let me see if I can find her. Jill was saying it's so hard because I just keep repeating, I need what you to understand. And he mocks you or he manipulates you. And you can't control his side of the street, right? And so it's very tempting when you are being mocked and manipulated and gaslit to keep doing 4 things that we teach you in Conquers to stop doing. So I'm going to give you a little preview of what that is. And we try to justify, J. We try to argue our point so that we'll be heard, A. We defend ourselves because we're being attacked. And we over-explain, Jade. All of those things are perfectly normal in a normal relationship with 2 maturing people who want to grow and mature. Those things will keep you in a circular gaslighting conversation with someone who just changes the channel. So you're justifying, then they'll mock you, then you try to explain, then they make fun of you or tell you you're a liar, then you defend yourself. And it just keeps going around and around until you're so exhausted that you vomit all over the place, whether it's externally or internally, and you feel like you know what. So don't let that happen. That's taking responsibility, seeing what's going on and not playing that game. Not playing that game. Stop justifying, stop arguing, stop defending, stop explaining. Not because you don't want him to understand, but you are well aware he doesn't want to understand. He wants to drive you into the ground and crazy making. And it works if you allow it.
That's right. And what we don't put a stop to, what we don't change or shift or speak up about, we're actually allowing it. We're saying it's okay. And may I share, Leslie, a story just personally from my own life that I had a victory in just last night?
Yeah, go ahead.
Around this topic.
I like real stories and knowing that we're real people and we don't have it perfectly together either, but we're self-aware. See, this is the thing. Perfection is not like you're doing it right all the time. The self-awareness is, hey, if I fall off the track because someone pushed me off the track, all right, or they provoked me off the track of where I want to be in my life, all I can say is, hey, I allowed that person to get too close to push me. That's taking responsibility. Or I have to take responsibility to learn how to not get pushed off next time.
Indeed.
Go, man.
You're good with it? Okay. All right. I love your words of wisdom here. So I'm going to speak to capacity for a second. So I'm a pretty high energy girl. I have
No,
what I
I
would
didn't
call,
know that about you.
and I love connection. And so I had, and I have a pride problem sometimes when it comes to that area. I don't like to say I can't do something. I don't, that has been an area that I've been working on and acknowledging my capacity. So I started doing some late night group coaching programs within our ministry. And so I go till late at night and I start really early in the morning coaching women. And so back about a year ago, I remember being in a challenging conversation with my husband about late night TV. And I would come out of my office, this little beautiful space that I am in, right? I would come out of my office and he would have some war movie on or a documentary or some shoot 'em up, bang, bang, very loud, violent thing. And I was just in this gentle, calm, tender space with women. And I would come out and I would feel like, oh my word, I had just walked into a war zone myself. And I wouldn't speak up. I would get resentful. And I would, can't you just turn that thing off? Okay, I'm just being real. That was a year ago. Since I have been understanding, doing my own work, walking with you and our coaching team and many others that are able to speak into my life, I realize I have capacity and I have limits. And so in this last year, I've been speaking very vulnerably with my husband about my limitations and about I don't have bandwidth to have all that noise around me before I go to bed. And last night, it was really beautiful. I was in my office till late at night. I came out. He had his bang, bang, shoot 'em up, very loud movie on. And he was outside on the patio watching it on an outdoor TV. So kudos to my husband. It wasn't in my home. It was outside on my patio. I walked out there. I sat with him and he shut it off. He shut it off. I didn't have to say one word. My presence was enough. And I had spoken about it. And ladies, I had lived it enough in 1 year's period of time where if it was in my living room, I would go to my bedroom and read, or I would come back into my office and protect myself. But it wasn't, Leslie, until I was vulnerable and I admitted that I have capacity. Instead of being prideful and saying, I can handle whatever's dishing out to me, I was able to say, I don't have bandwidth for that. And it gave him an opportunity. It wasn't overnight, though. It was me continuing to own my capacity, being vulnerable to speak it, and then allowing, or for like not allowing, giving him an opportunity to show up differently too. So when I changed the dance started to change. It may not be perfect tomorrow, but I just want to, it was, we met in that system last night. And so I just wanted to give a real life example about, it was a conscious choice that I made to honor my capacity, to speak it out loud and to live it. It was the boundary I held. If that's going on in my room, I'm boogieing.
Yeah. And so just let's put words to it. Instead of blaming him for wrecking your peace.
That's right.
And disturbing your well-being after a long day, you took responsibility for yourself and your needs. I need a peaceful space after a long day of work in order to chill out. And he heard that. You didn't criticize him. What's wrong with you that you have to be so noisy at night? You just said, this is what I need. And he might need TV time, and he
does need it
to go outside and do it. I thought you were going to say he had headphones on, but either way, it would have been fine. But some husbands may not care, and so so here's where the decision making comes when you're in this situation. If you are vulnerable and you say, "This is what I need," I need a husband who's, I need quiet, or I need safety in our relationship. I can't be, in a relationship where I feel afraid of you. And when you're yelling at me, I feel so afraid. I need that. Now let's say you are honest with that. And, oh, you poor baby, you're just so fragile, aren't you?
Risky,
Right?
to be honest.
It's risky.
It is.
It's risky, and only you know how much risk you should take or you're willing to take. I get that. But it tells you something. Okay, I am not even safe
That's right.
to share vulnerably. And that's important information for you to know. If you share Jesus, we talked about this yesterday. Jesus tells you, take the log out of your own eye, own your stuff, take responsibility for what you need, then go to someone and talk, right? And if they mock you, Jesus uses these words, don't keep casting your pearls before swine, because they will turn on you and trample you with that. And so if they're taking your heart and the very things that you're expressing in the most intimate relationship, it'd be the same thing if you said to your husband sexually, this feels really good or this doesn't feel really good. And they said, oh, you're such a prude. Every other woman likes this. It would make you feel like, oh, I don't want you to touch me, right?
Right.
That's what it would make you feel like. And so emotionally, when you open your heart and he mocks you or you mock him. Understand, it goes two ways. And so if your husband shares his heart or he's vulnerable with something, oh, man up. What's wrong with you? They're not likely to share much, right? Because we're like flowers. We're going to open to the sun and we're going to close to the wind, right? And so we're talking about being mature and learning to grow and taking responsibility for our needs and our side of the street. And when you're married to someone, the promises are that I'll care about that. I'll care about your needs more than I'll care about other people's needs, because we're a team. And so if you're not well, then that impacts me, right? But if you're in a destructive marriage where, hey, you don't matter, it's all about me. I don't care what you need. I need this, right? And whether that's verbally said or you just see that through behaviors and actions. So he's not going to care about your needs. That doesn't mean you don't have to care about your needs. You do. You do. That's taking responsibility for yourself.
It's so good. It's so true. And, a year ago, Leslie, we wouldn't have handled the situation last night very well. So a year ago, the scenario in my home was I came out kind of huffy and he was like, well, what about me? You've just been in your office all day. And so it was more of a destructive dance. And through vulnerability, through some empathy, through setting some boundaries on myself, right? Not on him. You can't watch that in my, I didn't say that. It's like, if you're going to watch that, you'd have lost the pleasure of my company, or I'm going to go to my room. And so knowing this is what we can do is we can start to own what it is that we need and what we want and set some boundaries. And then practice being assertive. I could have been a mouse in the corner and not said anything and developed resentment. And he could have done the same. We've done that dance. We've been married 37 years, going on 38. We've done that dance. And I'm so grateful that I have the support of you, our other coaching team, and doing my work. This is what gives us the strength in order to make different choices so we don't fall in to unhealthy behavior. So
we want to answer your questions, but before we do, I'm putting a banner on the bottom of the screen, because if you are sensing that you don't have a marriage where you can kind of have this conversation safely, that your needs and your feelings and the blame game is pretty unequal. Like you blame you and he blames you. And that's how it goes. You need some help. And so we have an entire workshop that I have created that I will give you totally for free. It's on April 13th, a Thursday at noon Eastern time, just like now, or at 7:30 Eastern time. So if maybe you can get out of the house and get on your computer in the car, get your hotspot up or use your phone. This webinar is not on Facebook. It's a much more private space. So you have to register ahead of time so we can send you an email to the link to go to the workshop. The whole workshop will be an hour long. The question I'm answering is, how long do you keep trying? How long do you keep trying to change the stance? How long? And how will you know? Like Leanne said, hey, I saw some good signs. How will you know that changes are real, or are they just image management? Are they just words? Are they just whitewash? I will give you very specific ways, Bible verses that support what I'm saying, and a roadmap to know if trust has been broken in your heart. You don't trust your husband. And I'm not just talking about adultery trust or pornography trust. That's a biggie for sure. Betrayal trust. But he may have betrayed you in all kinds of ways. I don't trust that my husband cares about me. When I'm sick, it doesn't matter. I'm still expected to serve him. When I'm hurt, he doesn't care. I don't trust that he cares about my feelings. Or maybe you don't trust that your husband's reliable. Nothing he says, he actually follows through in. It's all whitewash. Yeah, I paid the bills. He didn't pay the bills. Yeah, the taxes are paid. Yeah, no, I didn't pay the taxes. Or you don't trust him financially. There might be lots of broken trust. So how long do you keep trying to make a life and a marriage and a family with someone you don't trust? And if he's starting to wake up, or you think he might be, how long or what do you need to look for to see if it's genuine change or more of the same old? I'm sorry, take me back. I love you so much, but nothing really changes. So the workshop is on April 13th. Like I said, 2 live sessions, noon, 7:30. You have to sign up. If you're listening to this and you're not watching the screen, it's on the screen. Go to lesliebernick.com/join workshop. It's all one word, join workshop, lesliebernick.com/join workshop. The workshop will be an hour long. And then for those of you who might be interested, we will be inviting you into an educational and support group that we do called Conquer for women who are Christian, faith-based, who are in or getting out of destructive marriages, so that they can really get some support and some wise help biblically on how to really look at this and how to feel okay prioritizing their safety and sanity. That's right. Even if that means they may need to separate for a season from their destructive husband who does not want to hear them. So please sign up for this workshop. Again, it will be off of Facebook. I encourage you to come live because you will get components that you will not get in a replay. For example, you will get to ask me questions on a private space, and you will get a community of other women who are there for the same reason you are, and it'll help you feel not so alone or crazy inside. So enough of that. I want to get back to our topic. And so first I want to ask you a question, and then I'm going to ask your questions. Put in the chat, do you identify more with the person who blames? Like you're the blamer? Like it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. I feel that, I feel this, I did this, I acted this way. Are you the blamer? Or are you the one who tends to feel more like, it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault? Are you more of the person who blames yourself for everything? It's my fault he doesn't love me. It's my fault my kids aren't behaving. It's my fault. It's my fault. Are you the over blamer of yourself, or are you the over blamer of someone else? How do you dance that blame game? Put it in the chat just so we can get a sense of the audience that we're serving right now.
That's such a beautiful question, Leslie. I'm looking forward to seeing the responses. Blame myself. I see that. I used to blame myself. I've grown and realized that there are 2 parts. And there are, I think where I can fall into a snare as we're watching all this come in is I can get so self-reflective that I do blame myself. I can spend all this time wallowing and reflecting that I can see every fault of mine, every weak spot. And you know what that could lead to when I do that, what it's done in the past for me? Is I enable other people then, and I assume all the blame and I take all the responsibility. And so it's a gentle balance. It's a gentle balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so for those of you who are self-blamers, I want you to understand why you're doing what you're doing a little bit. It's a defense mechanism, just like the other kind of blame is a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism against feeling helpless. Yeah. Like, oh, if it is my fault, then I can do something to not make this happen again, right? So if it is my fault, then I can change me, and that will fix the external world, right? And let me say this, if you turn into a robot who never upsets anybody, maybe you can be the person your husband wants, but that's not the person God wants for you. He doesn't want you to be a robot. He didn't make you a robot or a perfect person. And so if you are the perfectionistic style person, who I tend to blame myself a lot too, I totally get that. it does lead to sometimes not self-reflection, but morbid introspection. Like you're looking at yourself with a magnifying glass because you're not perfect. And guess what? The truth is, if we're going to live in the hard truth, let's just say it. We're not perfect, and you're not perfect.
So
And
not
when you
perfect.
can, friend, when you can, and your husband's not perfect. And so when you can accept that, like really emotionally are okay with that. Like I am not perfect and I'm okay with that. It takes a load of weight off of you when you do make a mistake. Because when you do make a mistake, you don't have to blame another person and you don't have to beat yourself up. Like, I can't believe I did this. What's wrong with me? Nothing. Nothing. You're just a human being.
You're
And
human.
so this is something that you can learn to prevent. And the next time, or maybe you're just going to make mistakes because you don't know it all and you can't do it all. And that is life. That's reality. And there's kind of a freedom to say, oh, you mean I might have limited capacity? I had a client who thought she could, work, all day and then work at night, cleaning up her house and taking care of her children and making school lunches until 12 o'clock at night, and then get up at 5 o'clock and go to the gym and exercise and work. And she could do that routine until her body said, we're not doing that anymore. And she's driving home from work and she goes, honk, just fell asleep right at the wheel, crashed into another car. Reality woke her up. You cannot do this. You are not perfect. You are not God. You have limited capacity. Live within your capacity. Right? You need sleep.
And that's just golden wisdom right there. And maybe some of you might need a permission slip to acknowledge the fact that you're human. And, we're not marionettes on a string and we're not robots. And so this first question, Leslie, really addresses that. Would you like me to read that?
Yeah.
It really does. It says, what is one thing you can recommend I do if my husband chooses his family and friends over our marriage and has created a lot of tension?
So I would give you two things real quickly. The first thing I would start with is a honest conversation.
Right.
So the first thing I would start with, and maybe you've tried that, but maybe you've done it in an attacking way. Like, why do you always do this instead of being with me? I wouldn't go that route. I would just say, I'm curious that you seem to prefer spending time with your friends and your family over spending time with me and the kids, or me, if it's just you. Can you help me to understand that? Because I kind of had the idea when we got married that it would be like more of a we, and you don't see it that way. So can you help me understand how you see things when you get married? Because I obviously see things differently than you, and it's been causing a lot of tension between us. So I would be inviting him through a non-judgmental, non-critical question. We call it Curious Questions in Conquer. Invite him to self-reflect. Remember we talked about self-awareness and self-reflection is parts of maturity. So you're asking him a why question in a non-judgmental way, not why do you do that, but I'm curious, help me to understand. So that's the way you're going to phrase that. Your choices. And maybe he'll give you some answers like you're not fun to be around, or you're critical, or he might give you answers like, I don't know, that's how my family rolls. We've always done it that way. Or that's how my dad was. Who knows? You might give him a chance to reflect like, I didn't notice that I was really doing that much. But now that you bring it to my attention, let me notice. Let me reflect. Or he might just put you down and criticize you, whatever. So now, hey, it's not safe to even have a very curious, pretty open-ended conversation with him and inviting him to self-reflect. He doesn't want to self-reflect, right? So that's information for you. There's probably no change here, at least not now. So what's the second thing you can do? You can find some good friends and people that you can hang out with so that you don't feel so resentful and angry and lonely. That instead of just waiting for him to give you crumbs of his time, you begin to develop your life the way that you would like it to be. And then you make decisions about how marriage is going to be, whether you're going to accept that you live separate lives and share certain pieces of your life together, small as they are, or not. But you start building your life instead of waiting for him to build a marriage.
Indeed. And if I could tag on to that, just a hot tip if you're going to have and ask that question. One of my favorite questions is help me to understand. Starting that way is a curious place to be. do a little bit of work, shore yourself up, pray yourself up, and don't ask the question. Kind of plan a little bit. If this is a big one, would be some input I would give you, is be ready for their answer. Be ready on both sides of the coin. Get yourself in a really, a healthy spot that you really do want to know, so you don't get into the blame game. Well, if only you, or you don't receive things that aren't for you to pick up and carry. I had a friend say, I'm not picking up that suitcase. It is not mine. And so just be prepared to have an answer. Just be prepared for what they're going to share if you have a curious question. So
I love that. And I would add to that, be prepared by saying to yourself, it's okay that I don't say anything. That probably listening would be the best answer if you have the capacity to just listen. And when you are out of capacity, to say, thanks so much. I'm going to give this some thought, right? So you don't have to react. You don't have to give your feedback on what he tells you, because it might be very painful for him, what he says. And so you can just say, I appreciate your sharing, and I'm going to give this some thought. Or you can just say, I've heard enough.
I have to go to the bathroom.
Take a break, right? So I got to go to the bathroom. So I think you can take care of you, but prep for that. How am I going to handle if he's saying things I don't like? I don't have to take all the responsibility for his feelings. He could have told me these things 2 years ago, right? So it might invite a little vomit moment for him if he's been resentful about some stuff. And so understand that you do need to prep a little bit for what that might be and how you want to show up in that moment. And it's okay to show up and say, wow, that's a lot of information for me to take in, and I need some time.
And do these types of conversations at the optimal time. Can I just say that too, Leslie, that we can plan to have these conversations so we're not blindsided by our emotions. And so when we're much more in the, I want to create an environment where it's a little safer to talk than maybe it was a year ago or 5 minutes ago. And so there is some beauty in planning for a conversation that is really meaningful for you. Set it up. Set it up for yourself in healthy ways, and pray yourself up. Have a sister pray for you.
Yeah. All right.
We've got another question. Would you like me to read it, or do you want to read it?
I can read it. I've been talking to a man. He said that he is narcissistic and manipulates.
Oh.
I continued talking to him because he was in the love bomb stage. He discarded me. I went months without hearing from him, and then he shows attention again. I feel that I know it's not healthy. From all you've taught us, how do I take it to heart and live it? It hurts so much and makes me remember what I dealt with my husband.
May I just jump in here for a moment? Just the fact that you are acknowledging the fact, and he acknowledged the fact that he's a narcissist and that he manipulates. And so you have a desire to take it to heart and to live it. So I would ask you, what does taking it to heart look like for you? How will you know that you've taken it to heart and that you're living it out? It does hurt when we see the patterns repeat in our lives. And come to the workshop. I hope that you've saved your seat, because Leslie's going to be addressing this very topic in depth, and you don't want to repeat. We talk to women all day long who repeat the same patterns with a new man. It's like the same pattern, new face. Let that not be said of you. Your awareness is growing. And we can be tempted. We love bombing. I mean, who doesn't like to get beautiful flowers and kind? I'm a word of affirmation girl. And so I can easily fall in to love bombing. Yeah. And so knowing yourself and doing your work. And now I'll pass it over to you, Leslie.
Yeah, I just think that that self-awareness and what am I getting out of this? And why is it that I'm willing to put myself in this situation again and again and again are some good self-curious questions for you to become more self-aware of that. Has it been patterns in my childhood that I'm repeating? Sometimes we repeat patterns of childhood that if only I could get this person to love me, like my mom, who didn't love me for me. And so I might find friends or people who I'm trying to be friends with or trying to get them to affirm me or validate me. And the dynamic is I'm just trying to get a person who was like her to say, You're worth something, because then that'll mean she was wrong for not loving me. And it's such a subtle stuff inside that we have to work through and come to face, that I don't need this person's affirmation in order for me to know I'm loved. And I think this is really an important first step of real maturity in our God-centeredness versus people-centeredness. That this man isn't going to give you something. You already know he's going to give you a lot of pain. He already told you. He warned you.
He's warning you. I'm a narcissist and I'm a manipulator.
Right. The flowers are, I mean, why would you eat a cake full of arsenic that just had good chocolate frosting? I mean, if you know it's full of arsenic, I just tell yourself, I know that I love that frosting, but this is not a good cake to eat, and I'm going to have to back off, because you know that already. And so I'm curious as to why you are just keep like drawn like a moth to the flame, right? You already know it's dangerous and it's bad, even though there's portions of it that taste good. The core is rotten and you know it. So why would you keep going toward that cake? And so that's the growth for you to take right now. And not beat yourself up for it, but to be grateful that you're seeing it and to begin to do some of that work about that.
Yeah, the fact that you're asking the question. And then, writing down a couple of things. When you think about a dating relationship in the future, what are some non-negotiables that are going to keep you from that? You talked about with your ex-husband, what that was like. What are you not willing to tolerate anymore? And then just own that and keep it front of mind when you get tempted, because the loneliness is real. We see that, we hear it.
Yeah. I'm going to ask I'm going to ask a quick question that I see in the chat. I don't know if it's in the thing. I didn't see it, but how do I not attack and blame him after he's attacked me verbally? And my response to that, Rachel, is why would you want to be just like him? If you are aware that his behavior is unhealthy, why would you want to model that same unhealthy behavior back? I'll just be really honest, guys. Your children need to see one healthy parent. Your children need to see one healthy parent, whether you're living together or not living together. They need to see one healthy parent for them to have a chance at not repeating the patterns that are going on to the next generation, right? So if you know what he's doing to you is unhealthy, it's like having an affair because he had an affair. Why would you do that? Like, it's a lose-lose solution. And so I understand the temptation. I am tempted to do that too. Temptation to have an affair, temptation to pay back evil for evil. But I think this is where your maturity can take a big step forward to self-reflect and say, why would I want to do that? It feels good in the moment, having an affair. Yeah, but do you want to live with the long-term pain of that? Or the consequences of that? Or, paying back evil for evil verbally. He hurts me, I'm going to hurt him. He hurts me. Is that the outcome you want your kids to see at home? Do you want them to live in a war zone at home? That doesn't mean you don't have strategies, but attacking and blaming is not a healthy strategy, right? So maybe you could say, when he attacks and blames you, put your hands up and say, you know what? We've done this dance enough. I'm not participating. I'm going to the other room. That could be a healthy no, a hard stop to that. Okay.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm not willing to have a conversation that's elevating in this direction. When we can talk about this in a calm manner, in a mature way, then I can talk, but not now.
Yeah. All right. Here's a question. My husband is really trying to make changes, but after 14 years of marriage indifference, isolation, financial deceit, pornography, etc., and with me working with a counselor for 6 years, it feels like all I have is agape love, not romantic. I don't desire to reconcile, but just continue with my life. I've been working on my plan to leave. It has taken a while, and I get frustrated with the waiting while still being proactive. I feel at times exhausted, like I'm always living in the future when that day comes. And how do I just be present? How do I know if it's okay to leave, even though he's trying? I don't want to have expectations again if it's going to be the same old dance.
The first part of your question, I'm looking down, I'm reading it as well. I hear your heart, and we're just for you. You're not alone in this. There are many women that we talk to every day that are walking a very similar path. How do I be present? It's really easy. When we live in the past, it can be very self-defeating, and it can cause a tremendous amount of self-doubt. When we live so much into the future, it can create a tremendous amount of anxiety for us, and it can cause a lot of cloudy thinking. And so the gift that you can give yourself is the gift of presence in the moment. Are you safe right now in this moment? Are you taking care of yourself right now in this moment? Do you know your capacity right now? And so sometimes it's as simple as, what are you seeing with your eyes? What are you hearing with your ears? What are you feeling in your body? Getting really in touch. Sometimes I'll go over to the sink, Leslie, and I'll run some cold water over my wrists, because I need to feel my body again. I need to know that I'm in my body, because doggone it, I can get in my head and start overthinking. And so that connecting of head and heart helps me bring back to myself, back to presence. And so the moment of, am I safe in this moment? And if I am not, then I can take steps in that direction. And so part of knowing is getting fully head and heart connected, so your emotions aren't running away with you and you're able to make more conscious decisions. And so now I'm going to pass it over to you.
No, I think it was excellent. And I think that, I think learning to live in the present moment is the best thing all of us can do. Jesus tells us that very thing in Matthew 6 when he says, don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. It doesn't mean that we don't plan for tomorrow or anticipate, what might be the trouble of tomorrow and plan for retirement or plan to get divorced or plan to, educate our children or whatever we think we're going to happen. But we don't know what really is going to happen. But right now, you have an opportunity to live in the present and learn to live in the present and be the best version of yourself in the present, and observe your husband attempting to be the man he says he wants to be. And I don't think you should fear, I don't feel romantic love. It's okay. Feel what you feel. And don't blame yourself or put that burden like, oh, I got to feel something for him. I think you can say, I'm not lying and I'm not pretending. Those are good values, biblical values. God doesn't want you to lie and pretend either. All right. I can be kind. I can show agape love. I can do that even to an enemy. It doesn't mean I want to kiss them. Right. And so it might mean that right now you have to be brutally, not cruelly, but brutally honest with your husband. Hey, I don't know if we're going to make it. I appreciate your changes and I hope you're making those changes because that's the kind of person you want to be. Because I don't know if we're going to make it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again. I don't know if I'll ever, I don't know what I'll feel a year from now. Right now, this is where I'm at. Right. And I think those are ways for you to be centered and true to yourself and honest with him. And this is really important, ladies. And we'll talk about this at the workshop, that if your husband is changing in order for you to stay, once you decide to stay and you're going to make this marriage work, guess what? His motivation to change is over. Right. Just like if you want to lose weight to get into your size 7 dress because you want to look hot for an event, and then the event's over and now you have no more motivation to fit in that dress. It goes in the closet and you can wear your baggy clothes again, and that's fine. Okay, we all do it. But understand, if he's not changing these significant issues of character in him because he wants to be a better man and he wants to grow into maturity, then whatever he's doing is just temporary. And we'll talk a lot about how to know the difference in the workshop. So please, if you're in that place or you know someone who is, the workshop is free. We have a large Zoom, or not, it's not on Zoom, it's on a different setting, more private capacity. You can invite your friend and say, you need to show up to this too, because this is important to gain this wisdom and maturity in yourself, that you're not fretting about tomorrow. You don't know what his work is going to be. You don't even know what your work is going to be right now. Just work on you in the present and be the person that God's calling you to be in the present. And I think that tomorrow will take care of itself because it will show up how it's supposed to show up. And you will see clearly, is he really making these changes? Is this good for our family? Is this not good for me? Is it good for me? How do we work this out if we're going to work this out? Or is it workable? You don't know that yet. So don't anticipate all the what ifs other than prepare for the future the best you can. Like I'm prepared for retirement. I don't know if the bank's going down. We might lose it all again. We might have to move into a tent. So we don't know. We do the best we can with what we know. And we have to leave the outcome ultimately to God.
Right at the foot of the cross. Thank you, Leslie. There's a passage in Ephesians 4:25. We talk so much about not pretending. You don't need to pretend to have all this gushy love if you don't have it, because then you are lying. And that can be all kinds of people pleasing, all kinds of things. But in Ephesians, it says, Ephesians 4:25 says, therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. And so that's just an imploring to each one of us to know what it is we believe and what we are experiencing, and be able to communicate that first to ourselves, to God, before we take it out and speak it to somebody else. But let go of falsehood. Let go of pretending that you're not somebody, or that you're somebody that you're not. And that's part of being present in the moment as well, is acknowledging where you are today. And that's okay.
And I love that falsehood verse, because I think so often we've spiritualized that, like put off false spiritual teaching, put off your old religion, put off your old, if you were this religion, put that off, or you were, thought as a Jew, put that off. And it's really not talking about that. It's talking about putting off falsehood altogether. And so this whole idea that the church perpetuates, that you've just got to kind of put on a smiley face and fake it, is really against what the Bible is saying for our personal development. It doesn't mean we need to be butt naked in front of everybody either with all of our thoughts and feelings, but we do need to be honest with ourselves and honest with the Lord about where we are and who we are, so that we can continue to do our maturing process. And to call us to do otherwise isn't quite honest. So I'm going to just give an illustration. If I'm in the moment feeling like, oh, having kids is hard work and I wish I never had them. How many of you have had that feeling? All right. So what do you do with that? Are you honest with that? Like, wow, I need more capacity. I need more rest. I need more self-care. I need perhaps more help. I need counseling, whatever I need in the moment. I might need some more capacity, because that's not how I want to show up as a parent. That's just how I'm feeling right now. Right. But that's not something I'm going to tell my kids. Right. It's something I need to tell myself and tell the Lord, to be honest with myself, so I can build that capacity, so I can get the help I need. So I'm not just lying and pretending to everybody, we're fine, we're this happy family, we're this Instagram family. No, I'm struggling, and I have to be honest with that. Right. And I might not always be struggling. It might just be one day and I'm having a bad day, or I'm PMS, or whatever it is. So understand that our feelings are very fickle. They come and they go, and they're here and they're not. And pay attention. But it doesn't mean they're going to be the same tomorrow.
That's right. They can, our feelings, our emotions can shift in a moment. And so, but the truth of who you are in Christ, and you're maturing, God had given me that whole big, what do I really want to embrace, is that mature love. What does that look like, taste like, feel like, sound like? And that's where we're headed. That's the path we're on. And I think as we can communicate that to the people, the relationships that matter most to us, that I'm on a path to mature love, to mature engagement. You want to join me? Because what's going on over here is not working well.
Right. And mature love may mean that a marriage doesn't make it.
That's right.
Because a mature love is that I care too much about you in yourself to continue to allow you to treat me this way and tell you it's okay to have a relationship. It's not. Right. Yeah. So those boundaries in a mature love, even loving your enemy, is what God calls us to do. What does that look like? What does that sound like? It doesn't mean you live with your enemy. Of course you don't. They harm you. That's why they're called an enemy. They're not just a stranger. They're an enemy. And so boundaries are important. And self-care is important. Safety is important. Marriage is important. How we prioritize all that is the $1 million question for Christians. And I think this is a place where you get some biblical wisdom about that as we get to know each other better, if you're here for the first time. So let's get to the next question. We're almost at the top of the, or over the top of the hour. We've been running really, really long on these. How can I wait for change and not have expectations? So if it does happen again, I don't get hurt.
So one thing that I have found personally for myself is I call it the big W. So when we talk about waiting for change, one thing that I do is worship in the waiting, and I work on my who. I work on my who. Who has God created me to be? Get strong in my sense of self and who it is that God has made me. And getting very clear on that so that I can communicate more of who I am. I spent some of my life hiding my true self from some people who I didn't feel safe with because I was afraid of rejection or that they would push me away. And so we have an opportunity while waiting to worship, to connect with God and find out our who, and then develop our who. Develop your who. So that was one thing that I would add. And there's no guarantees that you're not going to get hurt again.
Yeah, I think if we're going to be fully human and fully alive, without deadening ourselves, you might have to face the reality that you are going to feel hurt again because life is hard. And Jesus says, in this world, you will have tribulations. Jesus felt hurt. Jesus felt hurt. Remember in Matthew, I can't remember exactly the chapter, is 10 or 11 or something, like he's crying, he's sobbing, he's saying, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I would have gathered you together. I wanted a good relationship with you. I wanted us to be close. And you wouldn't. And you wouldn't. That's how many of you feel. Oh, husband, husband, I would have loved to have a good relationship with you. I would have loved for us to be close. And you wouldn't. Understand the Bible gives us very specific things about what needs to happen in order to be close to someone. And trustworthiness and safety are two big deals.
Big.
And when you don't have that in a relationship, the relationship changes. You're not close, right? And if that happens in your marriage, that stinks. It hurts because no one signs up for marriage thinking that's going to happen. And sometimes it does. Sometimes because you didn't see it ahead of time. You didn't see the warning signs. Sometimes you saw them and you believe love conquers it all. Don't go back and blame yourself. Learn from it. Say, wow, I have things to learn about what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept. Mm-hmm. And I've learned that love doesn't fix everything. People have to fix things and they have to be willing to fix things. And if they're not willing, I don't feel safe. I don't feel close and I might get hurt. Right.
Indeed.
So this is the thing that I think Leanne has been saying over and over again, though. If you're listening to us, you're going to hear over and over again that if you are a man-centered woman, I need a man to love me in order for me to be okay. I need a man to not hurt me in order for me to be safe. You're going to have to switch up things if you want to be under our teaching, because we call you to be God-centered women. So that when you're a God-centered woman and you know who you are, not everybody's going to like you. Just like not everybody likes apple pie. You could have the best apple pie in the world and I wouldn't eat it. I have no desire for apple pie. I don't like it. I don't want it. I would never eat it. I'm rejecting apple pie. Does that mean apple pie isn't worth it? Isn't worth anything? Isn't good? No, it's delicious, people tell me. I just don't like it. I'm not going to waste my calories on apple pie if I can help it. I have many other things I'd much rather eat my calories with, right? So what I'm saying is you could be the best version of yourself. It's the person that God made you to be, the beautiful rose. And someone doesn't like roses. They like tulips, right? You could be the best apple pie that God made you to be, and someone doesn't like apple pie. That doesn't make you bad. But if you need everyone to think you're wonderful or love you in order for you to feel worth it, then you're saying everyone has to like apple pie. That's not realistic.
No.
That's not reality. And so your work is to be the best person you can be. And the people who like that kind of person will be drawn to you. And the people who don't won't. Just like darkness hates the light. Not everybody likes the light. But Jesus was the light. And some people loved him and others did not. So your work right now is to stop being so dependent on other people affirming you in order for you to be okay. Or other people not affirming you and you feeling hurt and rejected. When you know who you are and you are in God's affirmation pathlight, then other people rejecting you hurts. but it doesn't devastate you.
Right. And that's part of doing that work. And I just want to say the other part, and this is going to go on to the next question. How do I wait the expectation and not get hurt? And then the next question is, how do I protect my heart and not fall in love too quickly? And those questions are beautiful. And even the last one about how to keep hope and still pray. So here's the deal. This is my other nugget of wisdom, a gift that I want to offer up to you if you're listening and you're still, gosh, we've got a lot of people still with us. Hey, you're hanging in there. So here's the deal. Get some support. Find a community of people, a sisterhood that will help you to see you for who you are, who you enjoy spending time with, someone that you can be honest with about what it is that you're navigating. That's how you're going to protect your heart. You're not an island. You can't do this alone. You were never created to stay in isolation. And if that's one thing that we have learned during COVID, during navigating hard relationships, all of it, is we need one another. And so I want to encourage you, get with a community of people who are doing work and who desire to be healthier and more mature, just like you. Just like you. It's invaluable.
And the Bible tells us and warns us that we become like who we hang out with.
Absolutely. There's been science that has proven, and God's word talks about it over, hang out with a fool, become foolish. And so you want to surround yourself with people who you want to be like, who's doing this work, who's hanging and loving on Jesus the way you want to, who's acknowledging their self-worth like you are. Look for those people and share coffee. Say, hey, can we have a coffee date or go for a walk, go for a hike? Can we sit knee to knee? Tell me how I do this. So find other people. I say, if it's 5 people, I want Jesus to be one of my 5. He's one of my 5, right? I'm on Leslie's team and have been for years, followed her for over 10 because she's one of my people. And so find your people that you can link with so they can help you be the best you. So when hurt comes, because it will, you're not going to be devastated by it. When someone doesn't meet your expectations, which they won't sometimes, you won't be on the floor in a puddle of tears because of it. Mm-hmm. So get yourself.
And you might even be on the floor. You might even be on the floor in a puddle of tears because of it. But there is someone who holds your right hand.
Amen.
And you are surrounded by sisters who care about you and will help you through it. And it's not the end of the story. It's not the end of the story. And I think this is where we kind of lose hope as we think, oh, my life is over. This is the end of the story. I got divorced. Now I'm, no, this is not the end of the story. You're in the middle of the story. How are you going to write the next chapter? That's up to you. You've got to take responsibility for that.
Pick up the pen. Yep.
Yeah. I see one more question here. I think it's the last one, maybe. How do I keep hope and still pray for an abusive man to repent and change, regardless of the marriage outcome? So I'm not sure what the struggle is to do that, because I think that God would call us to do that, to continue to pray for our enemy if he's been your enemy, even though he's been your husband. I would hope that you would want to pray that he would repent and that God would bring every situation to bear on him that would cause him to reflect on his sinful state and on his need for God, right? That doesn't mean you have to live with him or hope that he's going to change. All you do is do what you do, which is pray. You're not in charge of his side of the street or God's side of the street. Those are totally God's responsibility and his responsibility. Your responsibility can be to pray and then let go and let God and let him. And I think this is so important. I always ask myself this question when I'm like feeling burdened. Like, whose problem am I trying to solve? Is this my problem, their problem, or God's problem? Right? And sometimes I'm trying to solve God's problem. I'm trying to be like the middleman God, helper. And God doesn't need me to help him. I can pray for his Holy Spirit power and conviction on this other person, but I can't control the outcome of his decision. Don't you think that God spoke to Judas? Jesus spoke to Judas, and Judas didn't change. Jesus spoke to Peter, and Peter changed. right? Jesus spoke to the rich young ruler. It says in the text, he loved him and let him go. He didn't change. And so I think this is really an important part of your work to do, is to accept whether you like it or not. Some people don't want to change, and they're not going to change. And they're saying, stop trying to change me. Okay, I hear you. Then you decide whether you can live with them safely and responsibly. Can they be trusted? And if not, then maybe you can't. And it's okay to say that to yourself and to God, that you can't live I wouldn't even live with a roommate who I didn't feel safe with and didn't trust, let alone a husband, right? If your roommate was, stealing your money or, bringing drugs into the house and others, you wouldn't feel safe. You wouldn't want to fall asleep in there. You would feel danger, as you should, right? And so what is it that we're asking Christian women to live in a situation where they don't trust and they don't feel safe, and somehow that honors God more than just saying the truth? I don't trust you and I don't feel safe and you don't want to change and I accept that, so I'm out of here. I'm out of here. But what that takes, ladies, and this will be a whole other Facebook Live, is it takes you taking responsibility now for your financial well-being, for you taking responsibility for your support, right? And we didn't grow up that way. We grew up wanting to be a wife and a mom, and someone else was going to take care of that. We didn't even need to worry about our career, did we? We did. We did. It's a myth. We are called to mature, and that means being a fully functional adult. And a fully functional adult can do what? They can take care of themselves, right? They may live with someone else because they want to, because it's a good partnership, but they can take care of themselves. So if you're married now and you have a pretty good marriage, but you can't take care of yourself financially, I would challenge you to that's a goal that you should set. Not that you have to work, but you can. You know you can if you had to.
And Leslie, to take off of what you just said, it was just so brilliant. And I think this is how we let go of the blame game, just like what we're talking about today. And that responsibility, taking responsibility for yourself. And that's, a very hands-on, very tangible way that we can do that.
And for our children who live under our care, right?
Absolutely.
So if your children aren't having safety and the effects of this toxicity is impacting you, and you are then not healthy enough to parent them well either, and your kids are suffering and they're academically suffering and they're depressed or suicidal or confused or cutting and all that, does this honor God? Does this honor God? Ask yourself. Or is it more honoring to God to walk in truth and say, hey, our house is full of black mold. It's affecting our children, and I won't live here anymore. To me, that's pretty obvious, right? And you would do it if it was black mold, but you don't do it when your husband's spewing out all kinds of toxicity. That's right. Because you're afraid. And I get it. I get it. How can you learn to be brave and strong? That's something you need brave, strong women around you to help you, right? And godly women, not just worldly women, because you will get some other advice that may not be in alignment with your true values of a godly woman. And so we would love to help you. I hope that you attend our workshop. If you know someone who really needs to attend the workshop, the sign up for it is on the Facebook page. It's leslievernick.com/join workshop. And I am going to be back this afternoon or tonight doing another Facebook Live, I think. And we are talking about tonight at 7:30. So come back if you can come back in the evening. We're going to be talking about, is it possible to have a relationship with someone who lies to you? Is it possible to have a relationship with someone who lies to you? What do you think? What do you think? Yeah.
What a provocative question. I can't wait for tonight's live. I cannot wait. I'll be here. I'm going to jump on.
And as I'm scrolling through the chat real quick, I just want to say to you, so many of you have made some comments that I would love to have commented on, and we aren't able to do that. But if you do have a question, put it in the chat. But your husband is going to say all kinds of things, like Jill is saying, my husband's saying I'm buying into a program, or I'm believing a lie, or that I'm getting brainwashed, or all that. You know, your husband is threatened by your strength, because if you're not going to put up with it anymore, all of a sudden he's put on notice. I'm not going to get my cake and eat it too. She's not going to let me do this anymore and get away with it. All right. That might be in his best interest for you to do that, to not let him get away with it. Just like you wouldn't let your children get away with not doing their homework, or get away with having their phone in their bed all night, not sleeping. You wouldn't let that happen, because it's not good for them. If you're going to be your husband's helpmate, don't let them get away with bad behavior on you. You can't control what they're doing. But if they're displaying bad behavior on you and you're just putting up with it, it's like letting your child hit you and you're just putting up with it. Why would you do that? That's not loving well, right? But he's going to be telling you all kinds of things. So you're going to have to listen to whose voice is telling you the truth. And so I'm going to go back to here, because I would encourage you, check out what I've said biblically. Check it out. Check out what he's saying biblically. And understand that you can't just take one verse out of context. So you have to know the context of the Bible, why it was written and who it was written to, and God's character. Just like you couldn't take a soundbite out of what I said, right? Out of this whole Facebook Live, you couldn't take a soundbite and say, oh, this is what Leslie thinks about everything. You don't know that. You're just taking a soundbite. So you also have to know the person as their character and who they are and why they said what they said in that particular moment. So that's how you read the Bible. And I would encourage you to start reading Proverbs and just ask yourself, okay, Proverbs is a book about relationships, it's a book about wisdom. It's a book about being healthy. What are the signs of a wise person? What are the signs of a foolish person? What are the signs of a wicked person? It talks about all three of them in the book of Proverbs. There's 31 chapters to Proverbs. Take the month of March. March only has 30 days, or April. April only has 30 days. March had 31. That's why we took Proverbs. But you'll miss the 31st chapter. Read 2 in the last day. Read 1 a day. And just ask yourself, am I wise? Am I foolish? Am I wicked? Am I living with wise people? Am I living with wicked people? Am I living with foolish people? Who am I listening to? Am I listening to wise people? Am I listening to wicked people? Am I listening to foolish people? If you just do that much with your Bible, you will make gigantic progress.
Indeed. And, in closing, because I think we're about ready to wrap up today, right? But, we can't control the behavior of other people.
No.
We can't. But we can control our responses to it. And so that is, we're inviting you into that opportunity. And so,
to stop blaming others. And it's not just blaming others for your reactions, but stop blaming others for your miserable life.
That's right.
If you're in a miserable life, what do you need to change to make it better? Right? If you're being oppressed and abused and lied to and cheated on and gaslit, and you're in a miserable life, what do you need to do? Not to turn him around or even turn the relationship around, but to create more safety for yourself.
That's right.
To create more help for yourself, to create more support for yourself. What do you need to do differently? That's taking responsibility.
Indeed. And nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah. So Leanne, thank you so much. Amanda, thanks so much for the tech help in the background. And we want to encourage you to go forward and let's use a different word. Responsibility is often equated with blame. Take blame. Don't take blame. Take ownership. Take ownership. I'm going to own my life. I'm going to own my experience. And if my experience is awful right now, what do I need to change so that experience doesn't continue to be awful? I can't change him. I can only change me. So where do I need to be? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to consult with? What do I need to do? And it might start with just attending these Facebook Lives that we're doing and going to the workshop to get the next step forward. All right. We're so glad you're here. Take care. And we'll see you tonight. Bye-bye.